Welcome back to the Friends of Sinn Féin video podcast. I'm really eager to dive in. It has been quite a while since we have had a chance to sit down and connect.
It has been, but it's been quite a busy period. I think out of the last 4 weeks, I've spent 3 on the road, very significant developments and events. And over the past 2 weeks, the US seemed to have followed me back to Ireland, from presidents and speakers and Congress members and members of the Irish American community, as well as people from Canada.
Yeah, it has been quite a busy couple of weeks, both here in America and in Ireland. World leaders are taking the time to not only reflect on the moment of the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, but also to really recommit to the process and talk about what the next 25 years looks like. Can you speak to some of the highlights and key points that you've heard over the past couple of weeks?
Oh, I mean, you were on the road with us when we were in New York, when we were in Washington.
Yep.
And I think just even somebody had asked me to detail what we had been involved in. So we had a number of events in New York, which were all very interesting. But when we had Washington, we had a meeting with Derek Shuley, the commissioner or the counselor to the at the State Department. We had a meeting with Jake O'Sullivan, the National Security Advisor. We also had done a series of presentations. We had met on the Hill with both Congress and Senate leaders. And the icing on the cake, I suppose, was on the last day that Mary Lou and Michelle got to meet with President Biden in advance of his trip over. And the message through that, and we also met with Special Envoy Joseph Kennedy III. But the message through all of that was all one of hope and optimism. You know, we have had the Windsor Park Agreement. The issues with Brexit have been resolved, and people were looking forward to moving on to the reestablishment of the institutions. So they were some of the highlights, and of course the community engagements, and just meeting with people talking about Ireland, talking about St. Patrick's, and interestingly, some of the engagements with academics who are looking, well, what is the next steps? Where do we go to next from this? If the institutions are up and running, what does Irish unity look like? So that covered that week, which would be, there was a month's work done in a week that week. And then we got back home again, and then myself and yourself met with Jerry Adams and Richard McCauley as we traveled to New York, and we had that incredible event in the Coopers Union with President Clinton, with the video message from Senator George Mitchell, with the 7 Irish American groups. And I what was remarkable was, one, it was a sellout, so it was 800 for there. There was around 500 or 600 on the wait list.
Yep.
So it tells me that there's a huge interest in Ireland. Continues to be on our peace process and on what the future holds. So that was highly significant and highly enjoyable, highly informative. And I then moved on. I went up to Toronto for their Easter commemorations and done some discussions in Toronto about the Good Friday Agreement. So that was all very interesting. And came back in time for President Biden, who landed in Ireland. And I thought very significant. He made 2 very significant speeches, one in Belfast, where he said that he wants to see the institutions up and working. And one in the Dáil, where he said that there needed to be a closer working relationship between the British and Irish government, getting back to the basics of the Good Friday Agreement, of a bilateral approach. And he used a phrase just struck home with me and my generation, and hopefully with future generations. There's no checkpoints in the future for the Irish people. So we're looking forward, and there can be no roadblocks or road checkpoints on our hopes and aspirations. And at one point, there was a crossover. So on Friday last week, President Biden was still in Ireland, and I don't know if you've seen him in Mayo. It was an incredible reception he got. And on the same day, President Clinton arrived for the events in Queens last week. So we had 2 presidents on the island, and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, as well as we had the current Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, as well in Ireland at the same time. So, I mean, that is huge for any nation to be hosting 2 presidents, 2 Secretary of States, all sorts of people from the administration and supporters from Capitol Hill. There was congressional delegations came over with both of those. So we've had a good time. And then this week was marked by a very formal series of speeches and conferences at Queen's University in Belfast, which is addressed by President Clinton, Special Envoy Joseph Kennedy, Jerry Adams, Mary Lou McDonald, Secretary of State Clinton, And then today it was Richie Sunak, or this afternoon it's Richie Sunak and Leo Varadkar. And it's not just looking back in a lap of honor.
Yeah.
It is looking forward to the next bit. And the most compelling speech was given by George Mitchell, where he was talking about the future, and he was reflecting that what happened 25 years ago fundamentally changed the course of Irish history. Yeah. And it should come as no surprise to anybody that has led to a huge transformational change in Ireland, which brings with it new problems, north and south, and new opportunities. It was very clear, 1998 changed the course of history, all for the better and all for the good, and we now need to meet the challenges ahead of us.
That's right. Yeah, it was. I will speak just briefly to the experience up in New York at Cooper Union. That was quite a room to be in and to participate in and to be a part of. You know, the high level engagement of the politicians you're naming, met by the heads of 7 Irish American organizations who came together to stand unified and say exactly that, to line up exactly in that way, saying this is a look to the future. The Good Friday Agreement it provides that path, and that was a really powerful experience. It just happens too rarely that all of Irish America comes together in that way.
Yeah, and I think I come back to the point always that there was a sense of hope and optimism. We do face challenges. By the way, there was complete agreement across all of the parties, both governments, all of the speakers, that the institutions of the Good Friday Agreement should be up and running, and the DUP's blockade should be lifted, and the election results of last May should be respected. The only people who were outside of that consensus, it was no surprise, was the DUP.
Yep.
And they have still given no indication of when the institutions can be up and running. But you know what? I just got the sense that, you know, the forces that are there are moving ahead. They need to move ahead, and the DUP can join us at a later stage if and when they want.
That is the sense indeed. You mentioned briefly and we will share more about the experience. The videos of the speeches from the evening at Cooper Union are up on our YouTube channel. If you're watching this, and you can go over at the end of this and watch those speeches. We'll have more photos and recounting of that in future newsletters. You did mention briefly that you were across the country with some Easter commemorations. Anything stand out as you traveled across the states?
So I went to the best part of America, as I call it, Canada.
Careful.
How do you insult 2 nations in one sentence? No, I'm only joking. I was in Toronto for their Easter commemoration, and it's always a great opportunity to touch base with the Republicans, and you get a real sense, you know, you're part of something bigger. There would be hundreds of Easter commemorations throughout Ireland. There's ones in Britain, there's ones in Australia, and then we had the one in Toronto. We also know of other ones by the AOH, and we had speakers out. So we had Senator Nell O'Donnell was in Chicago, and he also was in New York for the Clan na Gael commemoration there, and also in Long Island, and all of those were highly successful, and turnouts were up on those. And again, back to the people are looking forward with a bit of confidence. We had Louise O'Reilly, the TD, was in San Francisco speaking there at the commemoration. And there's a link, actually, two different commemorations, 2 different sides of the country. But both the commemorations in San Francisco and New York speak at the graveside of people who were involved in the Catalpa rescue.
Oh, wow.
You know, so the connection between them is there. And then Louise moved on again. She went to Calgary and Vancouver in Canada to mark not just the rising, but also to talk about the future and celebrate the 25th anniversary Good Friday Agreement. And that's only the ones, Greg, that we were involved with.
That's right.
There was also one in Minnesota, which was the first time they had run it.
St. Paul,
Yeah, so that was great. And then, of course, last week we had in great city of Philadelphia their commemoration, and Francie Malloy was over for that. And I spoke with Francie when he got back from the plane, he phoned me to say how much he enjoyed the commemoration, and he wanted to thank the people of Philly for hosting him. That's
great. Yeah, across the country events, and there are still a couple of events upcoming. If you visit our website and find the Easter commemoration list, there are some in the coming weeks as well. So check in to find out what's happening around you. If we can move into looking at the polls, the most recent polling data was released last week, and it's pretty impressive. You want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it shows that in the South that Sinn Féin have not just consolidated the gains they made in the last election in 2020, when we went from around 17-18% to 25%, but we're now consistently in the low to mid 30s in the polls, and we're stretching the lead out of the other parties. A lot of that comes down to issues like housing, where we've had Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael either in government or supporting each other from the opposition benches for the past 100 years, but over the past 20 years, when they had full control of the housing issue and as a housing crisis. We have young people now being forced to emigrate because they see no future in Ireland. They can see no way in which not only could they not put down roots and own a house, but they can't even afford to rent. So that's a huge issue here, and it's a huge issue in towns and cities across the states. But it's driving people to look beyond the current arrangements of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and look towards Sinn Féin as being an alternative, and look towards the whole concept that Irish unity would provide, which is we could build a new and united Ireland. We can take the best of both worlds, what works in both jurisdictions, and tackle the problems and build a home for all. So we're doing really well in the polls. We've consolidated opposition. The challenge, of course, is to continue to do well in the polls until the election day. Technically, I think the election is set, the latest run to 2025. With an expectation that this government could fall at any stage, and they might have their own date of fall of next year. And then we've got another election as well.
We sure do. Yeah, that's what I wanted to move into. We have an election on May 18th. We're coming up in the north, and we can talk a little bit about that. Can you give us just kind of a review of what's the state of play up there, and what do we know?
Yeah, well, we're quite confident that we will hold the position and the advances that we made in the election of last May. Now, the election of last May was an election to the Assembly, which is, if you like, the regional government. The election that's happening in May is to local municipalities, to local councils across the 6 counties. So we're confident we will bring forward, we'll at least match and then probably increase the number of councillors that we have. We would hope to. And again, people are broadly happy with our position, and they want to see an advance. They want to see the institutions up and running, the Good Friday Agreement protected, and they want to have the conversation about the future, about the constitutional future. They want to be part of that discussion about Irish unity and shaping New Ireland. And hopefully we will do well in these local government elections, which means we will elect more mayors, more councillors, and drive change at a local level, because it's not just about the high wire piece. You know what, it is very much about delivering for communities and delivering for individuals in their own towns and cities.
And can you speak just briefly to what does it look like on the ground? What is it? Is that knocking on doors, handing out brochures, holding town meetings? What does that work look like?
That and more, and posters, and it means it's expensive business, it's a tyrant business, but it's also a business of politics. It's democracy in action. So it's rapping doors. The feedback we're getting is excellent. Consistently across all of the constituencies. It's about erecting posters, it's about doing the meetings, it's about having the conversations, it's about social media, and it's about energizing your voters to come out. To be part of this big discussion about unity, but also this big discussion on very practical issues about what their local councils can do and the difference that Sinn Féin elected reps make on the ground, day in, day out, week by week, and election to election.
And I'll add, viewers of this podcast or listeners of the podcast, Americans all over the country can support this effort by donating to Friends of Sinn Féin. You can visit the website and click the donate link. There's an annual limit of $500 for donations to elections in the North, but all of those donations go a long way to making that process and that hard work possible. So please consider doing that when you finish up this episode. Anything else you want to close out with before we wrap it up this month?
Well, we have. I was about to say, has it only been a month? We have packed so much. We have packed so much in, and it just always reminds me of how lucky we are. First of all, to have the relationships with the US and with Canada over decades, over centuries, and it's one of family, and it's one of care, and there's a great pride in our peace process. At a time in the world as we have war in Europe and Ukraine, when there's threats to global security, when there's threats to other countries such as Sudan. But we have by and large a peace process which has worked and delivered. You know, it's that the practical lessons mightn't read across to all of those, but it does show you that no conflict is intractable. Peace can prevail and progress can be made.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very strong message. I'm looking forward to, we will hopefully have Pat Sheehan, an MLA, travelling out to New Bedford and to Providence, Rhode Island, and maybe into Boston in May. And myself and Conor Murphy will be heading back to Toronto for a session on the Good Friday Agreement as well. So keep your eyes out for that, and if you can join us somewhere along the road, that would be more than welcome. Again,
that'd be
any
great.
support with the elections would be
yeah. Greatly appreciated. Thank you very much, Ciarán. I do want to offer a special thanks to the organizations that helped to make the event at Cooper Union possible. The Ancient Order of Hibernians, the Ladies Ancient Order of Hibernians, the Irish American Unity Council, Friendly Sons of St. Patrick, the Brehon Law Society, the Friends of Sinn Féin, all came together to make that event possible. And it really was a special event. If you haven't yet watched the videos, please take a moment to watch those soon. We'll see you again in about a month, or what might feel like a year.
And I'm sure we'll be talking well before that, Greg. But yes, as I say, and thanks to everybody who travelled over to the events on this side of the Atlantic, the Congress members, the presidents, and also the Irish American community. In Belfast, I was with the leadership of the LAOH, with Marilyn and Dolores and a number of Congress members who also travelled over. So it's great to see, and it's a huge boost and boon to Ireland, to our peace processes. And long may that continue, Greg.
Indeed. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ciarán. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Very well.